Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I'm doing the same. Just set myself up. There we go. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for your time this morning.
Of
Uh,
course.
and first off, congratulations. How's fatherhood treating you?
Oh my God, thank you so much. It is amazing. We just got to 4.5 months, and he's really turned a corner where he's just just amazing to be around. The first 3 months were totally brutal. Now it's like a total joy. Yeah. So,
It's nice. Yeah, it'd be a very different rock and roll lifestyle from previously of not sleeping all night, I'm guessing.
absolutely, absolutely. It's such a juxtaposition. All of a sudden, every day is about, somebody else. It's like the relearning selflessness all over again. It's been a blast.
If you don't mind, I'll ask one more question about that, and then we actually will
Yeah,
talk about why we're here. How is that? Are you how are you going to manage that when you go out on tour?
very good question. Um, I kind of told the dudes, for me, for the next little bit, I think kind of 3 weeks is going to be my maximum in terms of touring. And I don't want to hold the dudes back at all. I do think there will be a couple things that might be longer, and I might have to get a fill in, which is like really sad because in 16 years, I've never missed a tour. But it's also part of life, you know. I think there's going to be a Europe tour that's going to be about 6 weeks in March, and it's too long for me to do. So my very good friend Sam, who used to play in the band Trash Talk, and he's actually how I wound up in the band originally. I think he's going to do it, and so for me, that kind of feels like a full circle. Like he introduced me to Jeremy all those years ago, and for him to come in and do it, it kind of feels like a nice circle of life thing. So I'm at peace. I'm at peace with it.
Cool, cool. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah,
Thank you. Now, obviously, why we are talking is the new album is out next week,
yeah,
October 11th. Um, Spiral in a Straight Line. I am going to go straight to one point on this. Um,
absolutely.
and I'm not sure how much of an influence you had on this, but the song Subversion, Brand New Love. Now,
Yeah.
I'm based in Adelaide.
Ah,
Adelaide
yes,
gets a mention in that song.
it does.
So, what's the story behind that?
So uh, the whole end part was taken from a segment that Lou Barlow wrote, and Jeremy had been listening to that song that Lou Barlow wrote as we were landing in Adelaide for the show on this past tour. Um, and it just kind of clicked for him. Like at that moment, he knew, because we ended up having Lou Barlow come in and record vocals at the end of that song. So he kind of had this epiphany as we landed in Adelaide. Like as soon as he got off the airplane, he's like, yeah, like the lyric is going to be come down in Adelaide, and I want Lou Barlow to come in and sing the part that he wrote over the end of the song. And it had been this gap prior to that where he didn't really know what he wanted to do with the song. And it was kind of like this epiphany he had as we were landing there. So um, Adelaide will be forever fondly remembered by us for that influence. So
I can assure you it'll be very fondly dealt with. There's another band, I don't know if you've ever heard of them, called, they're an Australian band called Cog. They're
yeah,
there, they're from up in Queensland, and they've got a song about coming to Adelaide as well. And every time they play that in Adelaide, everything just goes up another level. So that's all I'm saying. If you come back around on tour, just want to put it out there. So,
absolutely. I'll put in the word. We gotta do it for Adelaide.
yeah, even if that's the only show you do it for, you've got to do it.
Yeah,
Um, so going on to a wider thing on the album, Spiral in a Straight Line. Um, I did notice that lyrically, like, because you mentioned the word earlier, juxtaposition as well. I mean, spiral, straight line, that's a juxtaposition. But that lyrically, that seems to be how an awful lot of the album goes. There's these turns of phrases that kind of contradict what they are, but at the same time make a lot of sense. So what was the kind of the, if you know, what was kind of the meaning behind the title and then the flow onto the rest of the album that way?
the album is definitely all about transition. I think the whole album is about getting older, and despite being on the planet for longer and thinking you understand how things go, there being abrupt change and then all of a sudden having to adjust to scenarios that you've never experienced before. So it's kind of a juxtaposition, as we were talking about. Despite getting older and having all this familiarity, having totally new things thrown at you, having totally new life circumstances thrown at you, and having to adjust to things that you've never experienced before, despite getting older, despite being on the planet for as long as you have. So that's kind of the overarching spiral in a straight line theme. If I had to consolidate it into a couple of sentences.
It makes sense. And some of the notes I've got, of course, it makes sense. You guys wrote it. A couple of the notes that I was making when listening to the album, because things like "Force a Habit," that song really seemed like you just touched on there, like being trapped in the day-to-day routine of a life and not knowing how to get out of that, really.
Absolutely.
a mezzanine as well, I found quite interesting, because it wasn't just the lyrics that was in there, which was, what makes me weak is I'm not unique, which interesting, but it's also musically how that went as well. Because even musically, that kind of I'm not a musician, so I don't know exactly how to explain it, but it's kind of like a build up that happens in it, or that then drops and then builds again and then drops. I mean, you're obviously the musician in the band. I mean, did you try and match the music to the lyrics, or did the lyrics try and match the music? Do you try and create an ambience of, even if if you don't know what the lyrics are, you're still feeling it?
It's interesting because it is kind of a back and forth the entire process. Typically, the way that we work is we will come up with something instrumentally, and after Jeremy has had time to sit with a recording of the instrumental version, he will start to write lyrics to it. And then he'll come to us and say, hey, here's my idea. This is what I think for this part. And once we have that, we start to tailor it to him. So it's kind of this constant meshing back and forth. And sometimes we will mesh too far to the lyrics, and then sometimes he'll mesh too close to the instrumentals. And then it's kind of this pull back and forth, and kind of finding the happy middle ground seems to be kind of the songwriting process.
So this is album number 6. It's
Yeah.
the second one with Ross Robinson, who's
Yeah.
that guy's like a new metal legend. Like every album you listen to when you're a kid, that guy did it.
Yeah.
So I mean, what influence does he then have, both on as the band and yourself as a drummer?
So without a doubt, I would say Ross's influence is the biggest on drums, probably drums. And he knows exactly what he wants out of the drums. And it is amazing and challenging to work with him. He will come in and he will stand 2 feet away from me while I'm playing the drums along to a drum part. And as soon as he hears something, he'll stop me and he'll say, okay, so that part that you were just doing, instead of doing the bass drum on 1 and 3, take it out and do the rack and the floor there. Go. And it's just this stream of consciousness. Like, he is just totally a ray of ideas, and it's super keeps me on my toes. Just being able to adapt to it. And then it's so much fun to go back and listen to the song with new ears after being able to digest all these ideas he's had that have kind of flown through him and then flown through me. Yeah, I feel like for this album in particular, since we knew we were going to do it with Ross again, I knew that despite the fact that I had all the drum parts that I knew I wanted to do, I knew they were going to change as soon as Ross got involved, because he would hear things that I have never heard before, and he would have ideas that I would never hear before. So a lot of that for me on this record was practicing flexibility and just knowing that everything is kind of subject to change, and trying to work to that. And It's amazing. It's amazing. It's difficult. It's stimulating. It's exciting. It's challenging. It's kind of the whole realm of the experience of creating.
Nice. You've used the word there, and I did pick up on it a few times. 'Cause I'd written it down before I'd asked you, which was because he has a reputation for pushing people really outside their comfort zone. And you used the word challenging, I think, 2 or 3 times in there. So I
Yeah,
mean, it's
absolutely.
but I mean, I suppose that's the whole creativity part. I mean,
Right.
the moving from that. Obviously, you've got the tour of America. You mentioned, I mean, Europe in there as well. Guys were here for New Bloom Fest earlier on this year, March, I believe it was, which from all reports was quite a success. It was on the East Coast. I didn't get the chance to go. I mean, what are your memories of that last Australian tour? And naturally, of course, are there plans to come back?
We are going to try to come back as soon as possible. I really, really love Australia. To me, I would like move there in a heartbeat. To me, it feels like anytime anybody asks me like Australia, tell me about it. I usually will say it feels like Southern California, the country, but like kind of perfected it. It just seems like everyone, the quality of life seems really high. People seem a lot happier there than they do in Southern California. Um, so for me personally, it's like the highest priority that we get back there as soon as possible. Um, People are so sweet. People are so enthusiastic. Uh, I love it. It's a beautiful country and people are so nice. It's like when people are nice to each other in Los Angeles, you kind of assume that they want something from you or that like something is something is amiss. Um, but in Australia, everyone is just so kind. It's really refreshing and really lovely. So,
Good, good to hear. I mean,
yeah,
how was New Bloom Fest when you did that?
it was amazing. It was really, really amazing. Just getting that diverse of a group together, you know, was great. Like getting to we hadn't really played with Citizen very much, despite kind of coming up at the same time and being from, you know, kind of existing in the same realms. Um, but we know Ben who plays drums for them because he used to do Title Fight and we toured with Title Fight a handful of times. So getting to see them, it's kind of like felt like a nice reunion. Uh, People were pumped. The lineup was great. Met people that we'd never met before. Um, Got to meet some of the No Pressure people who I had never met before. They're very sweet. Uh, it just felt like such a great group, and I hope we can do something like that again, where we get thrown together with some bands we don't know, and by the end of it, everyone is friends. And uh, yeah, I hope we can do something like that again soon.
It seemed to have a really, oh, sorry, I dropped my pen. It seemed to have a really good vibe. Like before that festival, I spoke to Patrick from Movements and I spoke to Mercedes from Softcore, and I was
Yeah.
asking them about, which bands do you want to see? Both of them straight off the bat was your band. They were like the
Oh,
first band that they both mentioned. So it's kind
yeah.
of like, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to hear then that after that, this nice kind of camaraderie that comes from it. On just a touring
Absolutely.
festivals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm always conscious because I know we were a little bit late as well, and I'm at 14 and a half minutes. So I will let you go and have some time back in a day so I can get in Janine's good books as well. And I will let you go. Best luck with your new album. I really enjoyed the album. Go Hot Tip, Mezzanine, Altitude, and Subversion were the three that stood out to me.
Awesome.
Um, and hopefully we'll see you here. Will be next year, I'm guessing, but very soon.
Yes. Soon as possible. Thank you so much, but it was good talking.
Thanks, Elliot. Take care. Thanks,
Cheers.
Janine.